There we go. I thought we'd start this morning off. I know there are several new faces in our Zoom this morning, some changes at some of our local districts. And so I wanted to make sure that people had a chance to introduce themselves. So I'll start out. I know we have someone new in our Region 6 State Support Team office, and that is Ray Blevins, because he is replacing me in that area. We are very fortunate in the state of Ohio that the state has invested in more career tech planning district state support team consultants. So Ray, if you'd like to unmute and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. As Lisa said, my name is Ray Blevins. I'm coming from Southern Ohio. The last 10 years, I've been with State Support Team Region 15 as the Senior Special Ed Consultant and Transition Consultant. Prior to that, I worked several years in juvenile justice, as well as supervision of career tech programs, not only in public education, but also in residential treatment throughout the state. So it's nice to be back to my career tech roots. I'm looking forward to getting out of just being in compliance and back into school improvement. I also bring in a little bit of side hustle with me as a regional data lead. So I'm looking forward to working with a lot of career tech centers around data and improving the outcomes for all students.
Thank you. And Rhonda is new with us from Tech Prep.
Yes, good morning. I'm Rhonda Hograve. I have 25 years of adult education and higher education experience. I retired a year ago and got a call from Northwest Ohio Tech Prep asking if I'd be interested in a position with them. And I said yes. So here I am and looking forward to starting something new.
Thank you. Welcome to the group.
Thank you.
Andrea Johnson is new at Sylvania Schools.
Trying to unmute myself. Sorry about that, Lisa. Yes, my name is Andrea Johnson. I'm the new Secondary Director of Teaching and Learning with Sylvania, and I am very happy to be here. Thank you.
See if there's anybody else I missed. Frank, if you want to share your info.
Sure, I'm Frank Kohlhofer. I'm the new Director of Career Tech for Lima City Schools. I've been an instructional coach here for the last 2 years, but the majority of my career, I was a marketing teacher for Penna Career Center at a couple of different satellites. So I have been in career tech before. And I got a little problem with my video, so I'm working on my video, but as long as you guys can hear me, I guess I'm all right.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you with us and excited about your new opportunities at Lima.
Thank you.
Did I miss anyone else? Doesn't look like it. So I'm going to go ahead and move us on to our main presenter today. So Mrs. Reagan Feindling is with Penta Career Center. She is a social worker with them, and she's here today to talk to us about the kind of things that they are seeing happen at Penta with the services that are provided with the social workers that they have recently hired. They've only had, I think, Reagan, and maybe this is your second year, I'm not sure, but hopefully you can share that with us. So Reagan, at this time, feel free to share your screen.
Okay, I'm going to do the best I can. Okay, give me 1 second. Let's see if that works. Okay. Huh. Did it come up?
Yep. So at the bottom, you should see a thing that says share screen or new share.
Yep, it pulled up and I clicked the Chrome tab and I click share, but it's not wanting to share it.
If you want to put the link in chat, I could share it from my end.
Yeah, let me just try one more time. It's all coming up and the button's there. Let me try. I'll put it in the chat
Okay.
if I can. It's not letting me type in the chat either. Oh my goodness. Hold on.
Well, let me go back to participants. Yeah, you're a co-host.
Yeah.
Sorry
Well,
for
I
the
know-
technical difficulties,
Yeah, sorry
folks.
about that. I know when I logged in, it was giving me trouble even logging in. So I don't know if it's probably on our end.
So Reagan, you had forwarded me one a couple,
Yeah,
maybe
let
a
me
month
just-
ago.
Let
If
me
I look
email
in my,
this to you.
okay,
Really.
Yep.
I'm going to reply to the one you sent yesterday. Okay. I just sent it to you. Sorry about this.
technology is great when it works.
Mhm.
Oh, something's happening on the screen. All right. Give us just a minute. Waiting for my code to put in there. There we go.
Okay. And if you
All
could
right.
just change the view for me to, there we go. Perfect. Okay. So actually my name is Regan Finling.
Thank you.
That's okay. That's okay. And I actually have with me Jenny Asmar. She was also another school social worker that they hired last year at Penta. She just started a little bit later than I did in August. So yes, we're just starting our second year at Penta. And it was a busy year. We've really enjoyed getting to know the staff and the students here. And so what I wanted to start with, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide for me, Lisa, is I just kind of wanted to start with, for those of you who don't know much about school social workers, I know in the past couple of years, Northwest Ohio has all of a sudden just started hiring a bunch more school social workers. I came from Colorado where school social workers were much more common. So I thought just starting, for those of you who don't know much about our role, what school social workers are. And basically, we are trained mental health professionals that either have a bachelor's degree in social work or a master's degree in social work. We hold a license through the Ohio Counselor, Social Worker, Marriage and Family Board. That's either, as that's listed on there, LSW, LISW. And depending on our credentials, we can also obtain a professional pupil services license through Ohio Department of Education. Now with that, there is some stipulation. So to receive the license that would be titled as a school social worker, you do have to have your master's, and you do have to have completed additional coursework in school law and special education law. I know Ohio kind of changed the parameters. That used to be the only pupil services license you could get. And what they were struggling with is that there aren't many programs in Ohio that offer those additional classes for master level students. And so they now do allow social workers that hold that LSW or LISW to obtain what's called a registered pupil services license. And so that means either they haven't taken that additional coursework or they have a bachelor's degree. Okay. And basically our main role is to provide that link between homeschool and community. And if you could go to that next page. So this just kind of gives you an overview of what a school social worker can do and provide in a school setting. And each school district, so we in the Northwest Ohio area, the school social workers that were hired in these last couple of years have been meeting about quarterly. And what we realize is that our roles look very different in each district. And so to kind of encompass this, you know, really what we do is we not only look at the individual student, but we work with the family and we work within the school community and within the community in general. And so our role can be a mix of mental health, case management, education to staff, you know, providing more resources, and then also providing additional training within the school system. I'll have you go, yeah. So I did want to put this in here. So this was something, we kind of based it off the National School Social Workers Association, and initially it had also school psych in here. The reason we took that out is at Penta, obviously our school psychs are with our member schools, but we wanted a way to explain to staff and teachers kind of our role and the school counselor role. And so we tweaked this to meet Penta and worked with the school counselor. So it just gives you an idea of how we each kind of support the student in our, you know, within our role, and then how those roles overlap. And so we just wanted to kind of clarify that a little bit for staff here, and also for ourselves, just to kind of make sure, you know we have a lot of overlap, but really with the school social worker is we obviously focus on the individual, but we're really also looking at that family system and that community system. So what I would consider benefits of having a school social worker is that we can assist in crisis intervention. Obviously, we're here to support staff and teachers. So we did have many teachers that would, you know, call us up and say, hey, I have this situation with the student. Here's what's going on in the classroom. Or the student, you know, has divulged some information that I'm concerned about. And so we did provide support in that way. We also went in during kind of some of our student professional development days and did a lot of lessons around mental health and coping skills and things like that. So we did some in classroom support. We participated in our student advisory teams. So for those students that were kind of identified at that tier 3 level that needed more interventions, we supported, you know, we would meet with that team and discuss what kind of services were in place and what else we needed to put in place. And then with that, more often than not, the school social worker was the one that reached out to the family. We conducted risk assessments for suicidal and homicidal ideation. I will specify that this is only something that a master's level social worker can do. So if you are at any point interested in looking to see what a school social worker can do and are not sure, you know, what would be the best fit for your community, I would recommend ODE has some information that explains the difference between a bachelor's level and a master's level. So they can also help with developing, like I mentioned, in-services, staff in-services. We did a lot of assisting with conflict resolution, anger management. We did some small groups, primarily a lot more individuals, and then also assisted with positive behavior intervention. So this is kind of what I would list as like our first year accomplishments. So the top number is over the course of the year, we had about 124 referrals. The numbers below that only reflect my numbers. So I would probably double those if you count myself and my coworker, Jenny. So probably between the two of us, I would say, you know, double that 13 that we completed suicide risk assessments. I think what was helpful in that, especially for Penta, is in the past, they would call somebody like one of our local mental health agency, the crisis team, and would have to wait for that crisis team to come out to do that risk assessment, get families involved, obviously, whereas we could just do that risk assessment on site, contact the family, and then determine next steps. The other thing we did is we developed a social history form that we would send to parents, and then we also completed a second one, one-on-one with the students. So that gave us a much better understanding of what's going on at home, what's going on with the family, any histories, any traumas. And, you know, I would say my return rate was pretty decent. So out of the 25 social histories that I did send to parents, I had about 20 of them returned. I wrote personally 3 safety plans. Our counselors also wrote some safety plans. So when we did do some of that crisis intervention and we felt like we needed to have a support plan in place, that was some of the things that we worked with. And then I know, like I said, my coworker also wrote some. Over the course of the school year, we made about 7 home visits. I will say most of our time was spent with students in our office one-on-one. I think about 90% of what I did with students last year was mental health. And so meeting one-on-one with those students, typically we started on a weekly basis and then ideally was able to lessen that. We spent about 20 to 30 minutes with a student. So it's not your typical therapy 60-minute session. And what we explained to students and to their parents, once we had to get parental permission, is that, part of our job is to make the students successful here at Penta. And to do that, they do need to be in class as much as possible. So for us to pull them out for an hour just isn't realistic. And we would often make sure we were trying to pull them during like a study hall or something like that. And when I did kind of track what my job entailed, 74% of my time was meeting face to face with students and parents last year. One of the interesting things is that Penta did give us kind of an extended contract. So we have continued to meet with students and parents and families over the summer. So I will say my home visits have probably tripled since that number, because most of the, I made it very easy for the students if they needed to continue to meet with us, as I would, meet them at their house, meet them at a local library, meet them at a park, wherever they needed to be. I had some students that it was easy for them to come here and preferred that. And so that way we could kind of keep an eye on some of those students that we knew still needed that support throughout the summer. It obviously wasn't as frequent as it is during the school year, but that was something that, Penta felt was important. And, it's been we weren't sure how that was going to look. And I feel like it's gone very successful. So that was kind of a lot of information about what our year looked like. I do have a couple, I think Lisa had specifically asked for a couple success stories. And so Jenny and I were kind of talking about this, because I think, and you guys probably recognize too, sometimes the labor you put in now, you don't see immediate, it might be 5 years down the road, it might be 10, but we had quite a bit of issues with homelessness this year. And so one of the students that I particularly worked with was a senior this year, was kicked out of their home right after the first of the year. And unfortunately, in our county in particular, we do not have any shelters available. We don't have any shelters. So the closest one, Penta is located in Wood County. Obviously, we support 5 counties. This student happened to live in Wood County, and so they would have had to go to Lucas County to access a shelter. Fortunately, they had a situation where they were able to move in with a friend and grandparents, and that's been a semi-stable situation. But through that whole time, I worked closely with that student, one, to ensure they were getting their medical needs met. There was a few medical things going on. And so fortunately, that student was already receiving Medicaid for insurance. And so we were able to set up through our Job and Family Services Net Plus transportation to medical appointments, and we would have them pick them up here at Penta. And so that was something I worked with that student. And now that student knows how to make those phone calls on their own. Initially I had to sit down and make those phone calls with the student to set up those, those appointments and those transportation. The other thing I worked with the student is to also knowing, because they were a senior and I would need to transition them to community services, is I did connect them with our local mental health agency. So now they're receiving counseling, psychiatric support, and then also case management support. So a lot of those pieces I was doing, I was able to connect them with that community service. And I actually just kind of had my last meeting with them, and then also connected them through Job and Family Services. The student successfully completed and graduated. So that was very exciting. The student also passed their STNA, which was very exciting because that was shortly after being kicked out, and we were concerned about just everything going on. And so the student's been working hard to try to find a job and interview for jobs and things like that. So I did go ahead and connect them with Job and Family Services here in Wood County through their CREW program. And so that's a support that can continue to help the student with interviewing, applying for jobs. And then they can also support them in finding affordable housing. There's another program they have, I think it's called, it might be PCR, I can't remember, but where they can help with like first and last month's rent and that kind of thing. And so, you know, I feel like we've been able to transition that student well into community services. And then, you know, and so hopefully that support will continue. And I was going to let Jenny talk a little bit about one of the students that she had been working with.
Hi, everyone. I have kind of somewhat of a similar situation to my coworkers. The difference with mine is with my student that I worked with this past year, her situation was a little bit more complicated. She was a junior who early on in the school year, she and her family actually became homeless because they were kicked out of their apartment from one of our member school district areas down in Bowling Green. And due to I think some resistance from family because of lack of knowledge on a lot of things, the family was homeless for quite a significant period of time. And it did become a bit of a concern. And again, kind of like you, Regan was saying, one of our biggest difficulties is the fact that there is no type of shelter really that is accessible for people in Wood County. So that made things very difficult for the family. Since the start of this, I would say it was probably about a good 6 months, and then eventually we got Children's Services involved, actually from Wood County, and was able to help stabilize our junior in that with a foster home in actually Lucas County, in order to help her kind of learn how to build her own independent skills, as she is also 17 turning 18. So she is going to be coming back this year, still currently in foster care, and things have been going well with her foster placement. And she is going to be completing her senior year while still in foster care, and be able to access a lot of the services that they have available, such as the independent living program, and some of the case management services that Children's Services can connect her to, in addition to being supported through OOD, Ohio Opportunities for Ohioans Without, sorry, I can't get it right, OOD, so that they can help her, which they'll continue with her for a long period of time to help her be able to transition to work successfully throughout her time, not only here in her senior year, but they will be able to stay with her afterwards. So it's a success that is growing. Like I said, they were about homeless for 6 months until we had to intervene and get some stability in place. And now the outlook for her and her stability is a lot stronger than it was, because she has a lot more resources that are available to help her succeed, especially with her senior year. One thing that I have to admit that was really incredible about her situation was, despite being homeless for 6-ish months, she was able to maintain pretty much a 4.0 average throughout the whole time. So she definitely has the motivation to focus and succeed. So we're hoping that with the supports that we can provide to her, that she will be able to continue to do that. Thank you.
So how am I doing on time, Lisa?
You're doing good. If you had more to share, that's fine. If not, we can see if there are any questions.
Okay. I was going to just mention one more student, just because you like one of the success stories. So one other student that I kind of started working with after the first of the year was a situation, and this student in the past had some social emotional issues, had gone to her counselor in the past. And obviously we have worked extremely close with our school counselors here, because staff were used to making referrals to the school counselor, we went ahead and continued that. And so then the school counselors would come to us if they felt like the student needed more services or needed some social work support. And so in this particular case, the student, had been having a really good year, had working towards the STNA as a junior. And then unfortunately she's from a rural school, and there was a significant accident and her best friend had died. And so mom reached out right away, the counselor reached out to me. And so I started seeing that student weekly to start. And so that was something that, I continued to work with her. And there was a little dip. I mean, there was a couple of weeks there, about a month and a half in, that, really started to hit hard, and mom was a little concerned. And so we just kind of kept working through the grief process in that. And then by the end of the year, we were meeting every other week. I've checked in with that student a couple times this summer. The student was able to get her STNA. The student is going to be part of our transition to work program next year. So we'll be working full time through her senior year. And we've just planned at this point that the student comes in once a month to meet with her transition to work teachers. And so if she needs to, that student then can kind of touch base with me and knows that they can reach out anytime. So it was one of those situations where, I was happy that we were here and was able to kind of help her through that grief process and still have her maintain and be successful here. Any questions?
Can you share with us a little bit about how you maybe provided any kind of professional learning for staff?
So that is something we did not do. That is something a social worker can do. We have not done it as of last year because we were just kind of getting our feet wet here and kind of figuring out what our role would be. I mean, basically, the wonderful support we've had with the Penta administrators is when we came in, they said, we just need you to help students. And we know you're professionals and we're going to let you develop this program as needed. So now that we've kind of been a year in, we did help with, like I said, kind of had these student professional development days. And so the staff did come to us and say, hey, can you help us with, coming up with a, 30-minute presentation? This is what the students want to learn about. So like I said, we did a lot around anxiety, depression, emotion regulation, that kind of thing. So we did it with students. Our plan this year, we were actually just talking about this yesterday, because one of the things that we had developed is we kind of wanted a consistent way to report when we had to contact Job and Family Services, especially children's CSB, and mostly just as a tool to support staff when they have to make that phone call, because I know sometimes it can be a little daunting, especially if you've never made that phone call. So it's just a tool with the information they typically ask for. And so that is one thing we were discussing yesterday is with new staff coming in, and our big staff meeting is going ahead and kind of rolling that out and supporting staff with that. And so that's kind of some of the stuff that we've talked about moving forward is we may even look at doing a little additional training around abuse, neglect, and what to look for, because we have some training already that the staff get, but we feel like that's something that we can enhance a little bit, and especially more specific to high schoolers, because it looks a lot different than it does in elementary. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for our Penta social workers?
Reagan, I do have a question. My name is Katie Height, and I help support partnerships with Ohio Virtual Academy. But one of the things you mentioned that caught my attention was obviously you and the counselors have obviously a strong communication in order to help support your students. Mm-hmm. What does that look like for you all? Is that just more of you guys get together once a week, or is there some kind of internal system database that you guys kind of upload these early alert referrals?
So like I said, we didn't want to overwhelm staff with like new forms or anything. So they already had a process in place. If they had concerns of a student, whether it was academic, behavioral, etc., they already had a system in place to refer that to the counselor. So we have kept that in place. Also because you know, with it being our first year, we didn't know any of these students. Some of the counselors had already built in relationships with those students, the families, previous siblings, etc. And so that was kind of our goal, was to keep that in place. And that way the counselor is always in that loop. So we are continuing that this year. So the counselors will still be kind of that first point of contact. And then if they feel like the student would benefit from our services, they come to us. So right now it's like either they pop in my office or they send me an email. And then the other question you had about meeting, yes, we did meet weekly. They were typically pretty short meetings. Like we met Tuesday mornings. Most of the time it was less than a half hour, and it was just kind of a way to touch base and, you know, talk about what's going on. And then the other piece is with those kind of crisis assessments, we did come up with a form that would that was kind of based off the Columbia suicide risk assessment. And so that was something we gave to the counselors, but we also told them, you know, if they got in a situation where they felt like a student was showing some suicidal risk behaviors, and they were starting that assessment, that they would then call one of us, and then we would come join them on that assessment. And so it's been a combination of all the above, but like I said, typically a weekly meeting, and then a lot of just quick phone calls, popping in offices, checking in. Yeah, emails.
And Ray has a question.
Ray, you're on mute.
Thank you for that. Reagan, thank you very much for an informative presentation. Would we be able to get a copy of your presentation slide deck? And
Sure.
And second, if there's a career center or one of the local associate schools that are interested in possibly bringing social work services to their schools, is there a model or a location that you'd recommend sending that school district to get more information?
I would start with the, so there is a national organization, a national school social workers organization, and I'll make sure that Lisa has a copy of these presentation, and then I'll send a couple links. One, I'll send it to the National School Social Workers Association. They have a wealth of information that talks about, if you want to bring school social workers in, what does that look like? There's a whole host of information in there, and that's probably where I would start. We do have an Ohio local chapter. I actually recently just attended their board meeting this summer. They are much more active in like central Ohio and in the Cleveland area, but now that we have so many school social workers in Northwest Ohio, we're becoming more active in our area too. And so I think they also have a website that does have information on it also. And so I can also send links to Lisa with that website too.
Thank you, Reagan. Any other questions? I don't see any hands up. So thank you to both Reagan and to Jenny for sharing, and also to Penta for taking that step and hiring social workers for students. I did kind of think ahead that maybe people might want some resources, and so I found the Ohio School Social Work Association page, and the live link in my presentation will take you to their site where you can see there's all kinds of links for additional support. I have not used this obviously, but I don't know if maybe Reagan or Jenny would have comments on some good places to look on here.
I would say, if you scroll down, sorry about that. So really that area, probably a little bit up, sorry, but that area where it talks about so the ODE licensure considerations, that takes you directly to a link with ODE that gives you kind of the explanation of, what a BS level can do, MSW level, and then what kind of certifications they need to have. And then they do have some stuff pulled from the national site. The national site's going to be a little bit more encompassing about here's how you can bring in a school social worker and what that's going to look like and what you need to consider.
Thank you. Yeah, if you get me that link, I will make sure that I share it with this group. And then it just was very fitting that the ACTE, the magazine that they send out, the one in May, actually has an article about school social workers and, it's being proactive about mental health and school systems that invest in their students. Thank you, Penta. Taking a proactive approach rather than a reactive one can increase their capacity to prevent and respond to critical incidents. And as we know from Maslow, safety and security are the basic human needs, right? We need to meet those needs first before we can ensure that students are learning. So I think, if you have social workers in your district, make sure that you are engaging them with them for the benefit of your career tech students. If you don't have social workers, maybe start looking at ways that you could figure out financial streams to fund that. I do think it's very beneficial. I know most of you have been in career tech for a while, and you've had those kids who've aged out of foster care and get booted out of their homes. Homeless kids, they sometimes don't even know they're homeless because they're couch surfing with buddies. And there are benefits out there for them. There are supports that our social workers know about that maybe we don't. And having those things in place can help our students stay in school to gain the skills they need to be self-sustaining. So any questions now at this time? This is when I just open it up for any of you that might just have any questions general, not just about social workers in career tech, but any kind of career tech related questions that you have for the group. And hearing none, I will move on. So my favorite time then is the time for me to share some of my new finds with you. And this is one, this summer I took a Universal Design for Learning and Career Tech Education course through CAST. It's the first time that they have put one on specifically for career tech educators. And they shared this lesson plan template with us that I wanted to make sure all of you had access to. What I liked about it for sure was it starts out with this learning goal and it has these pro tips, but then also it specifically has the teacher think about what might be some of the obstacles for students and thinking specifically about the needs that would help identify, what those obstacles are and what the barriers are that so you can begin to remove those barriers. So this is a live link for you. It is a longer lesson plan. How you would choose to use it, if you would choose to use it, is up to you. But I wanted to make sure that you had access to this. I tried to put in purple all of those pro tips. I think especially for our entry year career tech teachers who haven't had a lot of teaching experience, this would be a really good thing just to think through that process. When it talks about, how are you going to hook them, right? Like, can you share a story of something from your own job experience? Right. And then, it talks about formative assessment, self-assessment, and then the barriers, removing the barriers. Then it does go a little bit deeper into the UDL component. If you've not had any kind of UDL training, this might be a little bit overwhelming. And so I just want to remind people when you're first starting thinking about UDL, it's really about what might be someone's barrier and how can I remove that barrier. So even if just keeping these two here in their minds as they plan lessons, especially as they go through the year. I just want to share that with you. I thought you might find it beneficial. If you decide to use it, please just make sure you make a copy so that you have a copy as well. And then I stumbled upon this. Honestly, I can't even tell you how I stumbled upon this, but it got me thinking about the work that we do with our work-based learning and making sure our students are maybe stepping through the right processes of building that continuum of work-based learning. And so Michigan has some really good resources on this website, and they just kind of work you through the process, thinking about, starting with, when we think about career awareness, we usually are thinking in terms of that career framework from ODE and how that should really be elementary, which is true. But once they get to career tech, what career awareness do they have? Like I think about Mark Perna's career trees, right? And so are we giving them maybe some people coming in to talk about the various careers? So that would be making sure maybe first semester of junior year, we're making sure we're bringing in a wide variety of careers that are connected to each program. And then once we have that, making sure that the students like, okay, well, here's my biggest interest. How can I align some of that interest in this career, right? It's those individualized career plans, even within our own career tech programming. Really, it's not a broad, I'm providing this content, but where's your interest and how can I help you get to that final goal that you have? And then finding those partnerships, right, to get in some of those work-based learning experiences, job shadowing experiences, and then the actual job placement, right? So really making sure that we're going through all four components of that, giving the students a wide variety of experiences. And again, in Techniques Magazine, it just was so fitting that this was all there. You know, when we think about our students, especially our special populations as defined by Perkins, you know, be that our students with disabilities, our students from poverty, perhaps the most powerful argument for engaging students in authentic work-based learning is occupational socialization. Schools can replicate the appearance of workplace in a CTE program, but schools cannot replicate occupational socialization. And I think that that's really important. I have another quote here later on. You know, we can make them comfortable in our school, but really they need to be comfortable on a job setting, which means being around other adults who are working there and seeing what that looks like in the real world. And especially for our students from poverty who maybe don't have a lot of connections to that real world work experience, or to our students with disabilities, just to build their confidence through those work-based learning experiences, whether it's 2 or 3 days or it's a whole semester. And when thinking about students with disabilities, again, I just want to remind everybody that, you know, we're looking for competitive, integrative employment for all of our students. And employment first, you know, we've talked about those shifting expectations. So those are there for you. But I highlighted here some things for us to keep in mind as we are looking for work-based learning for all of our students. You know, it needs to be at the location where the employee interacts with other individuals without disabilities, and presents opportunities for advancement similar to other employees without disabilities in similar positions. And so I know in a lot of schools out there, and not career tech schools that I've seen too often, but you'll see students have coffee carts. Well, is that really getting them in employee interactions with other employees who are not disabled? And so just thinking about moving them, transitioning students from your school setting for a work-based learning experience and taking that same idea and saying, okay, well, we did coffee cart here for a semester. Can we get you into a Starbucks or into a Big B, you know, and really trying to expand that idea, shifting that expectation to the student will be employed by an employer outside of your school system. And then I want to kind of give you a heads up. I know this is coming. Leah mentioned it at the summer conference just a couple of weeks ago. There is a joint memo coming, so I'd like you to keep your eyes out for that joint memo. It is from the Office of Exceptional Children and the Office of Career Tech Education. Go back. You know, and I just want you to, you know, make sure that you read through that, make sure you're sharing that with all of your other administrators and your special education professionals in your district. You will see the reference to the importance of shared responsibility between the partner schools and the career tech schools. You will see how Perkins funds require an assessment of your special education services and the needs of students, right? That you're looking at that information and assessing how well are you doing, and then making decisions right? Informed decisions from that assessment on what you can do next. And that your activities to prepare students with disabilities for high school, high wage, high demand occupations lead those students to self-sufficiency. And I kind of heard our social workers talk about that. You know, we're connecting them with OOD. We want these students to be able to live independently, to have a job that allows them to live independently. And then you'll also see in this joint memo that SST consultants are referenced, that we are a support to you to determine strategies when you are thinking about improving technical skill attainment and competency demonstration. So there's a lot more in that joint memo. Not a lot more, but it's a couple of pages long. But those are some of the things I really wanted to make sure that you were seeing in that document. Take the time to read it, to digest it, and think about how maybe it can change or improve your practices. That should be coming this week. And then I also wanted to share with you, some of you have seen the video I have shared in the past from Todd Rose, who was the author of The Myth of Average. And so I was researching him, trying to learn more about anything he had put out recently. And I came across this video of his. So I'm going to share his video. It's only about 3 or 4 minutes long. And then the funding source of where some of that work he is doing is coming from is from an organization called Stand Together. So watch this video real quick.
What people don't want is essentially the education system we have right now. A standardized system with standardized assessments leading to standardized outcomes that treats every kid exactly the same. The problem is these people are absolutely convinced that most people still want the existing standardized system, which is a collective illusion. A collective illusion is a situation where most people in a group go along with an idea that they don't agree with, simply because they incorrectly think that most other people in the group agree with it. If I believe most everybody else in the country is more or less happy with the one-size-fits-all system, then college is the only indicator of success, nothing's going to change. What we're witnessing right now across the country is a pretty dramatic shift in the way people think about their relationship between people and our institutions, and nowhere is that more prevalent than in education. Out of the 66 possibilities that an institution of higher education could deliver, what we wanted to understand is, what do you prioritize? What you're given is a task that says school A, school B. 6 of those 66 attributes are randomly grabbed for school A. Another 6 are grabbed for school B. Which one of these do you choose? Do it again with 6 others. And that allows us to build a profile for you of your trade-off priorities for higher education. What people think people want out of higher education is the prestigious school with a great sports team and an active social life. What people actually want out of higher ed is to get a good job that is meaningful to them, and to do that with as little debt as possible. There are incredible institutions of higher education who are giving us a vision of what the future of higher education will be. They are doing things that are modularized, individualized, customized using credentials instead of diplomas to create better signals for employers. People are really interested not just in having an undifferentiated diploma, but also a hybrid, on-the-job training, apprenticeships. It's not simply book smarts that get you the job that you want. Success is not just going to college. It is actually, are we equipping you to live the life that you want to live? Parents know their kids better than bureaucrats know their kids. Communities know their values better than the federal government knows a community's values. Where there's a lot of common ground is in this commitment to a far more individualized educational experience. Education is and always will be the great equalizer, the best vehicle for enabling people to actually live the kind of lives they want to live. That might be college for some people, it might be trades for others. What social entrepreneurs need to do is build the solutions and dismantle the illusions. If we get it right and we acknowledge the collective illusion, recognize our common desires for the purpose of education moving forward, there's an opportunity to drive pretty substantial change. And we can actually have the education system that we want and deserve.
This series is brought to you by Standing.
So while I feel like he was talking kind of more about college there, it was those same concepts of that collective illusion about college. And when I think back to the summer conference and they talked about the story, right? Getting the story out there of career tech education, that's changing that collective illusion. Notice how he talked about credentials. He talked about apprenticeships. Like those are the things right now that are important. And we need to keep making sure we're getting that story out. So I won't take you to the Stand Together page, but it is linked here for you. I did like the way that they frame their solutions, right? Their work to finding solutions to problems or opportunities for progress, right? Is what is our challenge? What might be a solution? Who are our partners? I think that's our biggest thing to keep remembering is we need partners in this work that we're doing with our students. And who are they? Whether it's the social workers who are talking about those outside agencies that we partner with, or it's our schools that are looking for business partnerships. We need partnerships to change this collective illusion, to really get the message out there and to do the work that needs to be done. And when we do that, right, when we think of solutions and we build the partnerships to help those solutions come to fruition, we will see progress, which is what they were able to do here, right? And so I encourage you as you think about right now, I know one of our challenges in career tech education is that there are more students who need to be in career tech, but our programs and our buildings are full. That's our challenge right now. Brainstorm solutions, find those partnerships so that we can make progress. And when looking at Stand Together, I came across this Genesis Works. It's more about kids from poverty, but it really made me think about not just kids from poverty, but our students with disabilities. And I took this quote out of it for you. So people in low-income neighborhoods of all ethnicities often face barriers that limit their aspirations and exposure to diverse career options. They might look at successful entrepreneurs in their community running local businesses like barbershops or nail salons or grocery stores and naturally envision themselves in those similar roles. However, the broader possibilities like working in financial services for a global company can seem out of reach because they lack direct connections to those industries. And for me, that just goes back to the Michigan's continuum of work-based learning. We need to give our students, all of our students, as many connections to those direct connections to those industries, to those industry partners, and create those authentic work-based learning experiences, especially for our most vulnerable populations who might not otherwise have any access to them. And one final share, I have to get this one in. I know we're always running low on time. I came across this magic to-do list. And yes, this really is their own little logo thing here. So if we go to their site, Goblin Tools, and it is an AI thing, but you use their magic to-do list. There's other ones that you could play around with. The chef one is pretty fun. You give it some ingredients and it can tell you what kind of meal to make. But you just put in what you want to do and it gives you the steps to doing it. I thought this is fantastic for instructors to use how to change a tire, right? So let's just put that in. How to change the tire on my 2018 Jeep. And then you wave the magic wand. When it works, usually it works faster. And there you go. It goes through each step, right? So for teachers, you might need to look that over and make sure that they've got everything right, but then you can print that off and give it to a kid. right? So for that student, maybe it's a student with ADD, a student who needs that constant support of going back and going over steps. This is a really quick and easy, throw it into your Goblin tool, right? And you can have those steps, print that off for the student. This is a fantastic resource for our teachers. I hope that you will share it with them. But again, they need to verify it, read through it real quick and make sure the steps are correct. But once you have it, it's there for you. So that's Goblin Tools, the magic to-do list. And then quickly before we run out of time, I wanted to let you know of a couple of PDs I thought you might be interested in. There is a national ACTE work-based learning conference that is happening every year. This year it will be in Wisconsin in May. I'm hoping to go to that myself just to learn more about not just, I mean, we do it in Career Tech, we do a good job with work-based learning, but trying to get more ideas for our students with disabilities for that competitive, integrative employment, right? Of doing a better job of serving all of our students, not just our students who meet our criteria to go out to work-based learning, but all of our students having opportunities for work-based learning experiences. And in addition to that, we have a special education PD day happening very shortly here. There is a live link for registration right here for you. So this is put on at Fort County Career Center through ACTE. There is another one in the southern region in October, southern part of the state, but locally for you guys, this would be a great session to send your teachers to for the day. Again, that's at Fort County Career Center on September 18th. Chrissy, if you're on and you want to unmute and just give us a little bit of information about it.
Hey, friends. So we are hosting one of two regional meetings for ACTE Special Needs Division. Just trying to kind of rebrand things. So topics that we will be covering on those two regional meetings are updates, obviously from ODE, new job training standards, job coaching and job training support. We're going to be talking about Rise Up. And a couple career centers have added it into academics. We have one that's added into a government class. And then we also have had some that have added it into their CTE program. And actually we've done that for County where my students who don't have much success on the web exams, we've changed our guest services and skills and industrial services to fall under the job training umbrella, our CTE 26. So those students don't web exam, we've the Rise Up into those programs and Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal. And then we're also going to have legal update from Susan Geary. So we're trying to make sure that we're covering a lot of topics and a lot of breakout sessions for any aspect of CTE special ed. So I can share my email with Lisa. If you have topics or you have questions or things, we want to make sure throughout the year that we're covering what you need, or if you need something in your area, or if we can connect you with anything. We really are honestly here to try to help you.
Thank you, Chrissy. I'm looking forward to that day, September 18th. It's a Monday. And then finally, our upcoming coffee hours are listed here for you. These are live links to registration, so I won't be sending out the Zoom like I did for this one. I do need you to register first, and then I will send you the links, and I will send those in an email as well. You'll get a follow-up to this. That's all that I have for today. Thank you for sharing your hour with me. I will see you again on October 25th. We have the presenter talking about youth science and how they're using that data from the youth science. I appreciate your feedback. The feedback link was put into the chat. Please make sure you give me a little bit of feedback on today's session. Other than that, have a fantastic day.
Oh, and if you can make it to that June 6th, if that's going to be there. Ooh,
We're waiting. We're waiting.
that'll be fun.